Yes.
All right, let's come back to the issue of whether it's so important that there should be no right to strike in this and other essential services. David Starkey, what do you think?
I think generally the rule is that there should be no right to strike. Because what is happening in this strike, and indeed has happened in the London Underground over the last 15 or 20 years, is a process of pure extortion. Bill Crow is not an ineffective trade union leader. Bill Crow is a staggeringly... Bob, whatever he is. The large, fat, red man with the pina coladas is an incredibly effective trade union leader. They are paid £52,000
Heaven forbid. How much do you earn? A lot more than that.
Indeed.
For a less onerous, less responsible job.
Come on. Their jobs could be replaced by a dummy. Most of the trains are designed to run automatically. Come on, these trains are designed and intended to run automatically, as every subway system in the world is increasingly doing. Now, what has happened with London Underground is that it has been mismanaged by both Livingston and by the current mayor. Livingston deliberately encouraged the trade unions. Boris is a hopeless administrator. Ken Livingston is a malign genius. And London TfL needs shaking up from top to bottom. The reason fares are so scandalously expensive is mismanagement on an unbelievable scale.
But is it a service so essential that the law that applies to the police and the military, that they're not allowed to strike?
If we were any other European country, it would be. Yeah. I was actually astonished to discover that we are the only country in Europe that does not have a coherent body of law defining essential services and defining what you have to do in the event of a strike. It's not about you're never allowed to strike, but it's that if you do go on strike, there is a basic minimum that you are obliged to maintain. And I was absolutely astonished. Every country in Europe except us has a very clear body of law relating to that, and yes, it includes public transport in large cities.
So what would the effect of that be in London?
It would have meant that you had to keep a service going on every single line at a certain level. It wouldn't have meant that you couldn't take any industrial action, but it would have meant that people who really had to get around could. And in terms of withdrawing your labour, I mean, you know, I have friends who have lost large amounts of money because their businesses effectively had no takings over the last 2 days.
Right. Well,
so, you know, this is why these are defined as essential. They're defined as essential because they are essential to allowing other people to carry out their normal life, essential to allowing people to get to doctor's appointments, get to school, get to work, get to businesses. That's what essential means.
Tessa Jowell, let's just define you a little bit here. You may be the person who challenges for the mayoralty of London.
You may know more than I do.
No, I said you may be, and I know many people tip you to be mayor of London. Were you mayor of London? What will you do about this?
Well, first of all, I would not support withdrawing the right to strike from public sector workers. In response to Alison's point, you know, I got the tube, the bus yesterday. It was inconvenient, long delays and all the rest of it, but it was possible to get, it met your standard of a basic service. But, you know, I think that withdrawing the right to strike assumes that public sector workers undertake industrial action in a kind of reckless, unthinking way, and they don't. And this was a strike. Just a second. Okay, David, stop it. This was a strike that was completely preventable. Completely preventable had, first of all, Boris Johnson not broken the promise that he made when he was elected. He promised that no ticket stations, ticket offices would be closed. I actually think that there is a case for, you know, getting people out of ticket offices and out on the platforms. All that could have been negotiated had we not had the farce of Boris Johnson and Bob Crow. The only way they could talk to each other was by phoning LBC and having their discussion mediated by Bob Crow. That is not the way to do it.
OK.
Well, Boris stood on a very clear platform of modernising the tube. And you know why we need to modernise the tube?
He promised to keep the ticket offices.
He stood on a platform of modernising
the tube.
Can
I read the quote out, just so we get round this point? 2010, the mayor takes this promises to London extremely seriously. Every station that has a ticket office will continue to have
Exactly.
one. Statement from City Hall.
The question is, how many people do you put in ticket offices, and are people better on the station platforms, this is the proposal, on the station platforms, helping people when
why did he say this?
Only 3% of the travelling public use the ticket offices.
So why did he go out on a
cards.
limb only 3 years ago to say every station will have a ticket
Because,
office?
of course, there will still be places you can go in each station.
You're struggling here, man.
No, and then why not? No, because I'm very clear. You have people. There will be people available, right, for when people have.
So this is called the student loans moment, isn't it? Yes.
But the crucial thing about improving the tube is that then we can keep the prices on it down, and you can't keep the travelling public moving at a reasonable cost if you set everything in stone and say that when 97% of people who use the tube don't go through a ticket office, we need to have them and staffed up because Bob Crow says so.
All right, let's just take one more point for the person at the back there.
I completely agree with Tessa there. Everyone should have the right to strike. Why? It depends what their job is. Just because they're brave enough to do that job, it doesn't change their right to strike.
what do you
Including the police.
And the right,
What do you make of-
and the
Are you
right
then
to
saying the... Come on.
What about the firefighters?
their right
What
to
about
strike
police? What
should
about the
encourage
firefighters?
other politicians to sort
Claims
out the
it was-
situation
What do you-
and
I'm
wait in
asking you a
24
literal
hours till it's all
question.
over.
You've said everybody should have the right to strike. Are you
Yes.
saying the police should have the right to strike?
Well, yeah, and the threat
Well,
of
yeah.
that.
Well,
Yes.
yeah. Is this how we conduct
And the
debates?
threat of that strike should make decisions.
I don't think it's wise to insult our audience, David.
On the
Starkey.
contrary, the audience occasionally needs it. No. It is an honest debate and not somebody who's afraid.
I'll take one more point from the... No, I've had you and... you, sir, in spectacles there, yes. Yeah.
Sorry, I think the most important thing in this is actually being lost. The people involved in the underground who work for TfL are being completely forgotten. Unfortunately, you've got two egos completely dominating this argument. The media are spinning it to be a Bob Crow versus Boris Johnson. Now, the thing is, if you take away the people's right to strike, what else have they got? If the unions aren't working, what protection is there for the common man in a dispute that isn't striking?
OK.
Have you heard of employment law? Do you know the huge structure of employment protection that now exists? Strikes in the public sector are mere extortion against you and me. That's all they are, which is why they're paid $52,000 a year.
Well, some of them are. Can I just deal with this? Because it's not true. Some underground workers earn $52,000 a year.
The drivers, who do nothing.
52,000 is a bad month's bonus for a banker in the City of London. Give me a tube driver with hundreds of people at his back. That's a responsible and important job. If the bankers went on strike, we'd all be better off.
All right. Let's go on to another question. This one is from Chris.